All right. When we started to talk about this conference, when we started to spread the word, trying to engage open source communities, businesses in trying to make something about this conference, we clearly figured out that there were a lot of questions. But very surprisingly, the questions that people were asking were not about the conference. They were about Microsoft. One of the questions was, why is Microsoft helping you guys building this event? What is Microsoft's interest in spreading interoperability, in making this event happen in Europe? What is the objective? Is there some kind of secret plan? So we're going to talk about that. And I heard the keynote from Raphael about interoperability. And I thought it would also be interesting to get the feedback from a free software developer working in the open source industry for more than 10 years and actually completely committed into interoperability. That's what I'm doing for a living for the last 10 years. And actually, everything starts with a secret. And Microsoft has a secret. Now, I'm not talking of a secret like the untold thing, the thing that you only unveil in the Chamber of Secrets of Harry Potter. I'm more talking about the secrets that you would have in the world of startups where unicorns were born. I'm talking about the secrets where it's the vision of a CEO or a founder, the profound understanding on how the world should evolve. And they try to spread the word about it, and they try to get everybody in the world convinced about the vision. Now, we all know the new mantra of Microsoft, which is mobile first, cloud first. But there's actually one part in the sentence which is even more important, and that gives the complete understanding of what they're trying to do. It's being a platform and productivity company. And if we take this first part of platform and productivity and associate it to cloud first, mobile first, cloud first word, then we start to get something. And if we go at the end of the logic, the idea is to get all of the intelligence in the cloud and productivity on mobile. And that's what I would call the mantra 2.0 of what Microsoft may aim at doing in the future. So how do we manage to go in this direction? Well, first of all, we need to understand that now Microsoft is no longer a software vendor that it used to be like in the 90s. It's a service provider. We can call it a cloud service provider, but that's fundamentally now a service provider. And there are two aspects in this ecosystem, in this landscape. First, it's to provide an infrastructure as a service. So that is Azure, and obviously you can run Linux distribution, you can have Dockerized everything, you can run all of the different services that you are accustomed to use on your hosted servers. And at the other side of the landscape, we have what we call the platform as a service. And this is Office 365. And that is a major thing here. Now, I'm a person which is data-driven, so it's just not like something that was given to me and I put it on slide. I'm trying to look at all the signs that we're getting in the direction and whether it's only marketing or if it's even more. And first, one of the angles that we can take to understand how things are evolving, the first one is that if we take the fiscal year report, the Q3 of Microsoft 2015, that was released a couple of weeks ago. There are several numbers in there, but there are actually three numbers that are actually very interesting. The first one is that the Office consumer market has declined by more than 41%. So we can say, wow, this is huge. But actually, there's a turnover because we come to the end with all of the end of Microsoft Windows XP licensing, and people didn't necessarily move to the next version, or maybe they moved to something else, or they didn't renew their Office licenses in the way that was expecting. The second point is that the number of users in Microsoft, in Office 365, has exploded. There are at the moment more than 12.4 million users. Now these users, they are not necessarily active users, or users that are paying a huge amount of money to Microsoft. So there's still a lot of work to do here for Microsoft to engage more and more users on their platform. And the third point is the growth of the commercial cloud business, which has increased of more than 106% in the last year, and which basically means that they are now making $6.3 billion on a yearly basis. But if that was not enough, I've been taking another source, a very trustable source, Wikipedia. And I've been looking at the Microsoft merging acquisition. Now, Microsoft has this history of acquiring or merging 6 to 7 companies a year. And I've been trying to look what was happening in 2014. And the first thing we notice is that there has been 14 acquisitions in total. And among these 14 acquisitions, so I've been taking all of them and trying to order them in different sectors. So we have the cloud computing in terms of infrastructure, we have the mobile and connectivity, we have the what I call data analytics, so big data, machine learning, and all of its algorithm. The first thing that we see is that there's only been one company that was acquired, and that is doing cloud infrastructure, which probably means that the Azure ecosystem, the way it is right now, and I think it started in 2006, is actually pretty mature today. And it's a good platform, as many of the platforms that are providing cloud services. But the most interesting point is obviously this 65% that are the combination of all the mobile productivity company and data analytics. Now, the kind of company that was acquired. There is, for example, Sunrise Calendar, which is a calendar that you have on a mobile phone. There has been Acompli that became the Outlook application. You have LiveLoop that lets you do sharing collaboration on PowerPoint online. And you have also a lot of companies that are doing data analytics, so companies that are doing machine learning, that are doing predictive analysis of customer behavior, that try to place ads so that we can anticipate and get better return on investment, a better conversion rate with the user. So all of these numbers, I mean, they mean something. And it means that Microsoft is just like this big, huge boat, this big container boat. And if you want to change direction, I mean, if you do sailing, and if you have the opportunity to go on one of these big boats, you know that to turn the direction, it takes time. It's not something that you do from one day to the other, you know, like in a startup. Imagine we have this little startup, and the CEO comes the next morning and say, okay, guy, I had this crazy idea last night. We are going to pivot. Yesterday, we were selling shoes. Tomorrow, we are going to make batteries with tomatoes. So you start the new development, you start the, it doesn't work like that. I mean, it's a shift that has started since 2006 and has continued to accelerate. And now we only see the end over, which is Microsoft has already changed. And I do fundamentally believe that Microsoft has changed. The perspective, the game has changed. Now, with this game, there is one thing, which is openness. Where does openness comes into this strategy? What is the idea of getting openness? Well, in this new market, we have to understand that we need to build traction. And how do you build traction when you are a service provider? You need to get customer acquisition, which means that you need to find a way so that you can have a better monetization of your user data. So in this world, a user is equal a certain amount of money. But it's not only the user. It's the active user that is going to use the system, but it's also the user and its data. And this component, user plus data, is actually one of the fundamental points. Now, how do you build traction? Well, to build traction, you don't have 1,000 of solutions. You need developers. The kind of profile of developers that I believe Microsoft is looking for, there are two kinds. The first one is what I call the API ninjas. Kind of people that are able to build an application from the ground up during a hackathon, just like by mixing API and potentially seeing in one aspect something that nobody else has ever seen before. Just like, okay, I'm taking my Outlook, I take my Uber, I make a Uber reservation directly in my Outlook. Bingo. Well, this one was from Microsoft. But it's this kind of thing that are happening and that are really interesting. And so when they build their application, they put it on the website, and then they say, okay, let's start to see if it takes off. And then it starts to get some early adopters, and these early adopters start to get many others, and they start to iterate over this solution until they have a product, and finally get acquired or move to something else. And at the other side of the landscape, we have what we call the protocols guru. People that they take their time. They try to have this big overlook of how the protocols work, try to understand every bit to see how they can manage to turn the system from one way to the other and how they can improve the global picture. But let's focus first on this ninja. Because if we remind the Microsoft love Linux, as a developer, the way that I understand it for these ninjas is Microsoft needs developers. Now think about it for a second. We are in an ecosystem which is a jungle. Every single company on this planet that is doing cloud or service provider is a service provider, is actually going to provide an API. And this API only serves the purpose of getting more and more developers engaged. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's the way the business works. But the APIs is fuel the software. And well, Microsoft has a long history. And the problem with Microsoft is that Microsoft has a background. You know, the Linux is a cancer, monopoly, software vendor for the 90s and beginning of 2000. So it's very complicated for developers to just say, okay, it has changed, and they have completely adopted another kind of strategy. It's not something normal. So I do believe that this openness strategy means that from this regard of the API Ninja is to strengthen the Azure ecosystem. And if we want to look at the Empower logic, it's just like a circle. It's a virtual circle, and actually this circle, we could apply it to any kind of company that is doing API. A service provider is providing APIs to developers. Now, the more developers you have, the more applications that are going to be built. The more applications that are going to be built, the more user you have, and the more active user you have. With all of these active user, you are going to get more and more data. And with this data, you are going to build more and more intelligence. And with this intelligence, you can build more and more productivity and have a customer value which increase and go up the roof. And finally, when you come to this point, probably newcomers or developers say, hey, look at this ecosystem, that's completely fantastic. They have all of this information that I can use to build new application from the ground up. I'm jumping in. So this is the kind of circle that we are, that is aiming at with this API ecosystem. And out of the other side of the landscape, we have the interoperable solutions. And Microsoft needs interoperable solutions for different points. The first one is the win-win collaboration. So don't get me wrong, it's not about being naive, but open source is actually probably the biggest QA department in the world. You have people that you don't know nothing about that are going to have a deeper look at the protocols and have a look at something that potentially inside your company you have completely forgotten for the last 20 years because it used to work, it works, and why should we make any progress on that? So that is a way for Microsoft to improve their product and to provide a better experience to all of their customers because they stabilize the product, they fix problems that I've never seen before, and they get more and more interoperable. Now there's another aspect, which is that obviously by providing interoperable solution, as we've seen, Microsoft is in this big container boat that is going directly into the cloud and wants everybody to go with them. But what happens for the customer that don't want to move to the cloud? Customer that has used to work with Office products and just don't want to move to the cloud. They're not ready yet. Actually, the real question is not why would I move to the cloud, but when am I going to move? So it's just a matter of time. And it's in this matter of time that we find the balance between open source and actually and Microsoft. Is by providing interoperable solution, we offer to the customer the ability to remain with his own desktop tools and continue using the same system. And potentially, from Microsoft's standpoint, is when the user is ready to move, he will move. And from the open source perspective, is, but we have so much more to offer. Okay, come, and we are going to build this new solution. So I think that if we get these things right, then it means that it's like a good marriage. There needs to be no mistrust, and everybody needs to understand what is at stake. And I think it's completely fair, just like to look at these two angles and move forward. Now, the future, because we're talking about developers, but the very, very long-term run is that at some point, if everybody moves to the cloud and we have so many intelligence, we have less and less needs for developers. And we actually have more and more needs for data scientists, what I call the wizards, people that are able to just develop new kind of algorithm that helps see into the chaos, the unseen, and find a path. So, well, but let's not digress too much and get back to the main topic, which is, it's a conference that is talking about three things. We are talking about identity, we are talking about mail, but mail at large, I mean groupware at large, and we are talking about data storage. Now, let me give you another secret. This is not a sexy industry. This is not the way, I mean, we are not the Docker guy. I mean, the Docker, I know, I do think that we do sexy things, but we don't. Fundamentally, when we talk to people about email, they think it's boring. Now, let me take you an example. That is what I call the tap water analogy. Water is essential to life. It's vital. And actually, if you go to, let's say that you go to a real estate agency or you go on the web and you find this amazing flat. 2 rooms, one for your wife and you, one for the kid. You have this amazing open kitchen. You even have a balcony and you have a schools and facility all around. You go visit it, it's oriented plain south. Wow, I mean, that's astonishing. And the rent, it's peanuts. So you say, okay, I'm going to get it. Then you go back to the real estate agency. You take the pen just to sign, and then you have the agent that tells you, oh, wait a moment, I forgot to tell you. Actually, you only have running water 5 days a week. So if you want to wash or go to the toilet or do whatever you need to do on Saturday and Sunday, then you need to get the public facilities that are around there. And obviously you say, what the hell? I'm not going to sign for this kind of, I mean, even if it's amazing, I'm not going to run for it. And that's exactly what happened, is that we take it for granted. Email is the foundation of the internet. That's the foundation of how business is done. And actually, we take it for granted. There's no question if you have a service provider whether or not you are going to get an email. The only thing that you are going to be grumble about is if you have an outage of 1 hour, then you will just like start on Twitter and say, oh, that's completely unacceptable, I have an outage of 1 hour. And then you go to the status page and you click refresh, refresh, refresh until that's fixed. But if we go back to our water, the water history is actually pretty interesting. And if we take the French angle, it's even more interesting. Back in the middle of the 18th century, we had in France a corporation, a very powerful corporation, which was called the water carrier. So it was more than 2,000 people, mainly coming from prison and this kind of thing, not very, people that you would recommend. And they were actually taking water from the Seine River and bringing it to the home so that people can wash. And you have to wait for the middle of the 19th century and the big work, infrastructure work in France, so that you start to get running water in houses. And even that, you need to wait until the 80s so that every single person in France can have access to running water. Not in major city, I mean even in the most faraway Pueblo. It's just like they just got access to running water at this point. And we take it for granted. Now, there is another point, is that there's actually, in this world, more than 1.2 billion people that still don't have access to running water. You have women in Africa that needs to walk 40 kilometers a day so that they can bring water back to their village and back to their family. And without getting into this, because this is a critical, major problem for humanity. But it means 2 things, is that, first of all, there is an emerging market, and this emerging market is not to neglect. How do we provide infrastructure to these people that don't yet have access? So in this case, it's water, but we can map it to email. And at the same time, we have all of this problem. We understand how important water is in our life today, and we have water scarcity. And you look at the problem in California when they have to do restrictions on everything, and they need to find a way how we can bring water and make it fluent. But for our businesses, we take water for granted. We take email for granted, and actually we are using it in several different kind of usage. We take it to wash our hands, we take it to take a shower, we even take it to drink coffee, we take it for washing machine and to wash the dishes. That is the exact same way with email and groupware. It's just like if groupware was just like, looks like the icebreaker, but in this case it's completely frozen. And in this landscape, when it's completely frozen, we have one question to ask. I mean, we are doing the same email, calendaring, task, and contacts that the past 25 years. We have improved the infrastructure, but in terms of user experience, there are things that are happening, but sorry, that's not fundamental at the moment. There's still work to do. And I do believe that when we think that there's nothing left to innovate, it's this single point in time where we are about to live a major disruption of our world. Think about Henry Ford. If he has asked people what they were expecting, they would say faster horse. They would never say, okay, I would like a car. So the main difference with the email industry is actually the disruption is not, I don't believe that the disruption is going to be one way to the other. It's just like to be a continuous movement, a step-by-step movement to something different, to something more elaborated. And I think that email is the perfect container to do that. So I would like to propose you, or to share with you, 3 evolution steps, 3 evolution paths of what interoperability may look like, and what are the areas in which we can make progress. The first one is what I call the user experience path. So designers or developers are the architect of the user experience. They are just like the wizard. It's a fundamental aspect because their job is about to make sure that you never need a handbook any longer to use your device, or that using the application is so intuitive that it's just like, yeah, I could never do it. I could never do it another way any longer. And you have to mix that with another thing, which is what I call the client processing. And there's something, I don't understand why, but Microsoft doesn't emphasize on that. And from my standpoint, it's something that is absolutely fundamental, which is a game changer. That is Office apps. For the last 10 years, I've been wondering, just like, we could do these kind of things with Outlook. But in the end, I was bounded with a software that was not movable, and the only thing that I could eventually do is write plugins. I'm sorry, I'm not going to write this kind of plugins of the plugins that used to be available. Now with Office apps, you have this ability to build applications using open standards, using HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and integrate them directly into your client, into the whole suite of Office application, and have the same look and feel, so make your application completely integrated. And that is, for me, a fantastic move forward, because it opens a wide range of perspective of what we can do. It's not any longer like in a compatible system where you have one vendor and many people using it. We really become in the interoperable landscape where many different vendors can talk to many different people and build an ecosystem that may be parallel to the Microsoft one, complementary. And these Office apps, you can run it everywhere. So for me, that's a major progress. Another one is, for example, RunCube Next. RunCube just launched. RunCube is this webmail that is used by 500 million people on the planet and has really changed how things were working. And actually now they are in the process of raising funds using Indiegogo platform and trying to build the next generation of webmail using responsive design and all of the kind of technology, new technology, so that they can deliver to the world a free software solution that you can use either on your mobile devices, on your tablet, on your desktop computer, on the internet, and that works fluently. And I think that's extremely important. And the final one is, I never had the opportunity to have a look at LibreOffice online. And I think it's really interesting what is happening, because we are very familiar with Google Docs and Office 365. But I think that having another player in the ecosystem that is doing complete free software and provide things this way is really interesting. The second aspect is what I call the business API. So in this world, we talk about a ninja. And well, a ninja, we could also talk to them as technology alchemists. So these are these people that are building an application from the ground up. And the very important thing here is that they can bridge the thing between two different businesses. But the commitment I would like to see from Microsoft in this landscape is actually building API. The problem with API, the fundamental problem with API and software vendor is that from one day to the other, they can just like completely change the API. And then if you have built a business that was based on this API, then you need to adapt, and you need to adapt very quickly. And that's not an easy way to do things. So I think there is a space for a software independent vendor that provide API for the industry. Let's take an example. A couple of weeks ago, there was the Build 15 conference, and I was following this talk about Office 365 Unified API. And that is just fantastic. I mean, that's just like the best sci-fi movie that I have expected for the last 10 years to happen, so we can do things. You have your user object, and you associate it to your object, like in Minority Report. You have all set of information, documents, email, contact calendars, and you have all the links with other people, and then you can build a graph out of there, and that is just awesome. Now, what if I believe, and that would be my right, to believe that I don't think that to do machine learning or to use that, I want to use Hadoop. I want to use another technology. Let's say, for example, that I want to use MapReduce. What is my choice? I wouldn't have a choice. But I can reuse this API. Because this API is easy, is straightforward, then I can also implement something that is similar and then say to my user, okay, keep using your application, just bind into my system, and you will see a difference, and then you make your choice. So this is something where I would like to see some commitment, is that the API are not going to change on a regular basis. And the third aspect is what I call the interoperability, the server-side interoperability landscape. This is a landscape that is fascinating, because for one given problem, you can have any number of solutions. The only thing that makes two systems work together are the protocols. The protocols are a layer, a glue. And this is this glue that let us communicate. And so you have different projects in this area that are really changing the game. You have obviously Samba, you have Free IPA, you have OpenChange. I won't deny what we're working on. And these are really game changer, because if you just imagine what happened in the past is that you had a system, end of story. Now you have the ability to choose how you want your information to be stored. And that is changing everything. If we take the machine learning big data example, the algorithm that is used behind is potentially one way of, we may have disagreement in here or different perspective. To conclude on this keynote, I would like to share with you what I believe can be 5 ways to disrupt the groupware market today. And I'm combining all of these 3 elements that we've seen before, just like the user experience path, the compatibility API, the server-side technology, with 5 different projects that can be around cryptography, that can be about theory of information, that can be about collaboration, or that can be about daily usage in the business industry. The first one is what I call Snapchat email. So for those of you that don't know what Snapchat is, that is an application for a teenager working on mobile where you take a picture and you share it to your friend, and the picture automatically is destroyed within the next few seconds. So I don't deny the major interest that this application has for teenagers nowadays, and probably this is why it has such a big valuation. But at the same time, I do believe that there is an outcome for the business industry. Let's imagine for a second, I'm a CEO that wants to share confidential information with some of my key employees. And I want to make this as stealth and as volatile as possible. So I have different ways of doing that in this system. I could just tag my email as confidential or private, or use a keyword. I write my email with attachments, I send it. And when I send my email, instead of getting to my postfix server so that it can be transmitted and delivered, it will directly go into a memory storage. And into this memory storage, my email lives there. And when people try to access this information, we have a value that doesn't change, that is the delivery receipt. So every time one of the user gets the information, we update the delivery receipt, so that when it's all one, we destroy the information. Or we can even say, okay, if someone has failed to read this information within 5 or 10 minutes, or 1 hour or 2 hours, then we automatically destroy this information. And the way to grab the information is when I'm going to get my emails, I have this overlay on top of my IMAP storage, and I directly go and I see that is a mail and I fetch it. And whenever we finish to either everybody send the read receipt or we have the delivery receipt done, then we just send a notification and say this object has been deleted. So the object just lives on every single user mailbox for the time being, and it's controlled by the server. That would be very powerful. Another idea is to mix WebRTC with MAPI. I would like to use an email object as the container. I would like basically that the email be the container of groupware, the same way that Docker is, and our solution is becoming the container of virtualization. And it should be possible with Office apps. I mean, we are using open standard with HTML, JavaScript, CSS. So potentially, I would have the opportunity, if I'm, for example, a teacher with 1,000 students that are in different schools, and I'm giving a class, and I want to touch all of these thousands of people at the same time, then I could just send an email, say, okay, the class is about to start with a description, and directly within my email, just like a streaming object. And my students would only have to open the streaming object to get access to the content. They would even be able to chat with the teacher so that you would have an interactive QA. And at the end of the class, then it automatically turned into a recording that is available. And without even have changed your email object, you have one email object, which is the complete class. And you can just like drag and drop into a folder for archives and work with it later. That would be completely fantastic. A third one, which is more what we see on our daily basis. When developers try to set up a meeting, this is a nightmare. You just have like 15 or 20 emails, and even more with Spanish people. everybody wants to give his opinion, and everybody is going to say, yeah, but I can't on this day, let's reschedule another time, and so on. And at the end of the day, you end up with 15 emails that just to try to get one single answer, which is everybody available Monday, on Tuesday at 10 o'clock for a conference? One way to do that is if we just take the email as a polymorphic object, an object that is able to evolve by itself. So yes, I know that Outlook does have poll function, but actually the poll function that Outlook is providing is one-to-any. So you have one master and you have slaves. And the slaves are updating the record, and the master in the end choose what is the best time. What if this case, everybody, it was a social experiment, and everybody could just give his idea, his opinion, and we see the email object just like changing over time, always changing. So if somebody is not available, then automatically we'll see something that goes red, and if we want to raise the flag, we would just have to send a notification and say this email has changed, or this is a new email object, and then automatically you email change, and you know something has changed about it. That could be something so powerful. And we could even use machine learning behind. For example, if I'm trying to schedule a meeting, obviously I want to know the availability of all of the potential attendees. And I want to get sure that when I'm proposing a date, there won't be someone that is not available. And even further, among all of the progress that I've done with that, I potentially want my calendar to be automatically updated with the best date possible, and these objects to move around time, so that in the end, as soon as I open my Outlook calendar, I can have an understanding of what is my schedule, my predictive schedule. A fourth idea, and this one really matters to me. It's what I call the floating exchange organization. Our businesses are changing every time, every day. And the way that we are building a company today is not the same way that my parents did 30 years ago. Today, if I'm building a startup, I may be working with designer, I may be working with an external accountant, I may even have a lawyer, I may have an external developer. And all of these people, they don't belong to the same organization. So I do believe there's a room, there's a space for a platform as a service where everybody, no matter where they come from, can just like plug into the system with a unified authentication and can just start to communicate. Now, the major point here is that there may only be one user using Outlook. That may be the CEO, the founder, or core employee that needs to get the global vision. And actually, your designer doesn't need to look at the accountant thing. So one of the things we can do, and that is what we are building with OpenChange today, is we are able to take a mailbox, and every single root folder in your mailbox can be mapped to any kind of service. So let's say that your designer is using Dropbox to share with you the templates of the new website logo. Then you could map directly Dropbox and access it transparently from your Outlook. And let's say that you have another one that is doing social media. Then in this case, you could just like have a Twitter folder where everything you post directly will go into Twitter or Facebook, and your contact can come from LinkedIn. The possibilities are endless. You can just like build the next generation system that you are looking at. And a final one. This one is more challenging. I'm very interested about the zero knowledge proof algorithm. Let me pitch you about what it is very quickly. Let's say that I want to tell somebody a secret, but I don't want to reveal the secret. I just want him to know that I know the secret. For example, take a very big Where's Waldo graph. If I know where Waldo is and I don't want to disclose where it is, I could take this big sheet of black paper on top of which I would just put a very little empty box. And then it will be large enough so that when I put it just on top of Waldo, and then the people wouldn't have the knowledge of the global picture. They would just know that I know where Waldo is, but they wouldn't know where it is on the picture. And that is the fundamental aspect, which is that the context in the theory of information is everything. If you don't have the context, you can't necessarily understand what is the information. And what I would like to see is not a mailbox where I have access to my thousands of emails or calendar entries and contacts. I would just have access to a mailbox where I have only access to information I don't know. If I have 15 emails that I need to share with someone, then potentially I already know the context. And if in the end it's a meeting at 12, if my mailbox get hijacked, if a malicious user get access to my mailbox, the only thing he will be able to know is meeting at 12. He wouldn't know the object, he wouldn't know what it is about, he don't know where it takes place. And that can be also a fantastic way just for human beings to share information. Now, it may require a lot of work, but these are just 5 ideas. And actually, this really starts today. I mean, all of you in this room, you are here for the reason that you find interoperability the way to go. And so from these 5 ideas, we can probably build together 1,000 more in the next 3 days that are coming with all of the social events and all of the tracks. I mean, we're going to talk about Exchange, SharePoint, file format interoperability, law. We are going to talk about big data. I mean, we are going to get product demo. We are going to talk about Office 365, about the cloud. It's a fantastic opportunity just to get some knowledge, and then with your own perception, your own history, just like to find what matters to you. Because in this software industry, the only thing that we are aiming at is solve problems that matters to people. So I really do hope that you are going to get a great experience during this following day. Thank you.